This is TruEnergy nationwide.
Hello, and welcome to TruEnergy's new agent training series and our module on the structure of the deregulated energy market. Now, as a sales agent for TruEnergy, one of the first things that you're going to need to understand is what is deregulation. So today we're going to look at the process by which energy transfers from generation to the end user and how that changed with energy deregulation. Now, after energy is generated, it's going to go through various transmission lines on its way to a local substation. From that point, it's going to go through various distribution lines to the end user, whether it be a residence or a commercial business. So prior to deregulation, all of this was handled by two different entities. The first was a wholesale generator, and the second is a utility. Now, utilities have different names in different areas. Some of them are referred to as TDSPs, which is Transmission Distribution Service Provider. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as a TDU, that's a Transmission Distribution Utility. Occasionally, but very rarely, you might hear it also called a Transmission System Operator, or a TSO. Now, the wholesale generator did exactly that. They did the generation, or the production of the energy. The utilities, on the other hand, they dealt with every other aspect of getting the energy to the end user. The substations and transformers, the transmission and distribution, that includes the lines and the poles, all the meter reads, all the billing, any related customer service. And since they were in charge of the lines and poles, they also dealt with any service and repairs. Now, since utilities covered specific areas, customers essentially had no choice in the matter of who was going to provide their energy. This is why, in order to remove the monopolies, deregulation was introduced. And as a result of this competition, we ended up with lower rates, increased customer service, stimulation of economic growth, new jobs, and most importantly, electric demand is projected to increase by up to 30% by the year 2035. So deregulation is actually going to help keep up with this increased demand through the competition of the local providers. Now, with energy deregulation, a lot of this has actually stayed the same. We still have the wholesale generators producing the energy. The utility still manages everything from the substations through the power lines. They do the meter reads, they do all the lines and service. And the key difference, as we see it, is actually on the retail end. Whereas the generators used to sell directly to the utilities, what ends up happening now is the generators sell to what are called retail electric providers, or REPs. The utilities are still going to handle the transmission and the distribution of the energy, but now we have the REPs who have taken over the billing and all the related customer service. Now, we've already established that competition is a very, very good thing for a variety of reasons. The problem for the customer ends up being that in Texas, for example, there are literally dozens and dozens of these providers to choose from. So conceivably, a customer could call around to each one of these providers and shop for rates, but of course that takes an inordinate amount of time. And even then, most customers aren't going to have the market knowledge to understand what's going on with rates at that point in time. So there ends up being a huge gap between the provider and the customer. Now, the broker comes into play to actually help bridge this gap. If you remember, TruEnergy is a broker. So what we end up doing is we end up connecting customers to retail providers. And at the same time, we're going to help them negotiate the lowest rates possible. You can think about it along the lines that we're actually going to make the providers compete for the customer's business. Now, typically a brokerage is going to do this in a couple different ways. First off is through market knowledge. Because we deal with this every day, brokers are going to have a better understanding of what's going on with the market, whether rates are going up, whether they're going down, when it's going to be the best time to buy, etc. The other advantage for a broker is buying power. Now, this is true with almost anything. The more you buy of something, the cheaper it's going to be. And it's no different with energy. Because of the amount of business we actually bring to these providers, we can actually get better rates than the customer would by going to the provider directly. Now, it's important to remember, however, that it's not always just about rates. A lot of these REPs are going to end up competing for business by offering a variety of different pricing options, renewable energy options, customer service benefits, and other incentives. Now, regardless of which provider they end up choosing, it's important to remind your customers there will never be any interruption in service when they switch providers. Since the utilities are still the ones that do all the transmission and distribution, the only thing the customer will notice is the different bill that they get in the mail. So what sets TruEnergy apart? What actually makes us different from the competition? First off, we have an incomparable market knowledge. Between our training and our network of sales associates, we have a better understanding of the market than almost any other company. Second, we have a superior buying power. Because of our large customer base and the amount of business we bring our providers, we're able to negotiate rates that simply cannot be beaten. Next is our providers themselves. We've already discussed that there's an endless list of providers out there. TruEnergy has chosen to partner with a number of these REPs based on their aggressive rates, their outstanding customer service, and in many cases, their commitments to renewable energy programs. Most importantly, though, TruEnergy boasts an unrivaled customer service. Most customers simply do not have the time to spend all day on the phone trying to get a hold of the provider when something goes wrong, whether the customer is simply having a billing problem or even if their power gets cut off. As their dedicated account manager, you are there to help them at any time they need. This is a key selling point, and it will help your sales tremendously. Finally, with operations across the country, TruEnergy is able to service customers in almost any deregulated market. Only select states, however, are deregulated, and even in those states, there are some areas that are not deregulated. In Texas, for example, there are only certain portions of the state that are deregulated. A lot of the more rural areas have electric cooperatives or co-ops or city-owned utilities. Now, this is because there's not enough usage in these areas to warrant deregulation. Now, just because somebody's in a co-op, it doesn't mean that we cannot help them. Customers in a co-op may or may not be given a choice of REPs. TruEnergy has a pricing engine, and the best way to check for a co-op is always check your zip code in the pricing engine. Now, it's not a guarantee, but chances are if you can get pricing for that zip code in the pricing engine, we can service that customer. Now, this leads to an important question of who deems what areas are going to be deregulated. Now, most of these states are going to have an agency that deals with the oversight of public utilities. The name of the agency may differ a little bit from state to state. Some places it might be called a Public Service Commission. Others it may be a Public Utility Commission. Other states it may be a Board of Public Utilities. But in all states, they essentially do the same thing. They're going to deal with all the issues of regulation in government, whether it's with the utility or whether it's with the provider. They're also going to end up ensuring any safety and reliability issues. They're the ones that are going to regulate and govern anything with the energy market. They're going to be in charge of anything with safety, with reliability. And finally, they're going to be the ones who field any of the formal customer complaints, whether it be for a utility or for an individual provider. So all the information that we've covered in this module is actually going to be the basis for everything that we do going forward. So it's going to be important to make sure that you understand everything in this. Now, if you still have questions, don't fret. Remember, you can always go back and review this module or any of the modules, whether it's to make sure that you have the information down, or even if you just want to go back at a later date and refresh your memory. If all else fails, don't hesitate to ask questions. We're here to help you put this information together. We're here to give you all the tools you need to be as successful as possible with TruEnergy.